And there's the bell, and it's time for the Norfolk Knitting School for another session. Thank you, my beloved students, for joining me again. And I'm going to be doing something a little bit different this time. I'm going to be sort of stopping and starting because I'm going to be starting a sock. And I made a sock. I made a little sock. It just occurred to me, I left it at home. I made a baby-sized sock. But I've got the pictures here, but I'll bring it in the next time. All that for nothing to make that little sock. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be doing. But first, I've showed you this before, but I just want to emphasize the importance of gauge when you're making just about anything. And so what I've done here is I've got, this is the swatch I made a long time, well, last year, when I first started, and I'm going to use the ruler today and show you. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. You can see the difference in the stitches. I think I started down here with maybe maybe a 3, and then I ended with maybe a 6 or a 7. And so I'm going to measure. I'm going to set this down, and I'm going to measure this. Now, what happens is if you're working on, let's say, 100 stitches, and you've got 5 to the inch, then that's going to make a 20-inch piece. So 5 stitches to an inch, 5 times 20 is 100. If you're working at 4 stitches to the inch, when you're supposed to be working at 5, you're going to have a 25-inch piece. If you're working at 6 instead of 5, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be smaller than 20 inches. So this is something, and I hate it when they give these gauges of 5.5 to, as a matter of fact, if I see that, I don't know, I tend not to want to make the garment. There's ways you can, not exactly get around it, but if you are looking at a pattern that is, say, 5 to the inch, and you're looking at doing, that you're actually working at, say, 4, know that it's going to be bigger, so you could work on the size below. It's best not to get into that situation, but that is what people do. Or if they are using, for example, now this is a sweater that I made. In fact, I showed you this a long time. This looks pretty kind of ratty now, but I'd shown this to you a while ago. This is like a very sort of a blocked off, very crude sort of drawing of what a simple sweater looks like. So it's really a triangle. You know, there's the ribbing coming in a little bit. There's a little bit of an indentation for the armhole, and there's would be the sleeve. And that's what I did here. I just have a straight sleeve on here, and I didn't have a whole lot of yarn left, so I just made this little, and it's a drop, so I didn't really pull the armhole in very much. But I just looked at what I liked in terms of the hand or the feeling. It's called the hand. It's the weight of the fabric, and they use that for fabric that's already made or knitted fabric. And I just said, okay, I can work on this in this hand and this gauge, and this is what I'm going to come up with. This is the amount of inches I need. So I was, but this is something very, very, very simple. When you start doing something more complicated, it's not too good an idea to get involved in that kind of second guessing. So I'm going to lay this ruler down, and so I'm going to put it right here, and I'm going to count the V's. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and this looks like it's just about 4.5 here. If I come down here to the bottom, and I'm going to line it up with, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here, but I'm going to line it up here. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's, that will make a difference. I mean, you may say, oh, gee, it's hardly. But when you're working over a number of stitches, and the smaller the number of stitches, the less difference it will make. But when you're making a sweater for an adult, it can make a big difference, and it can really, Now another thing that's kind of interesting is oftentimes when there's a pattern stitch, the pattern will give you the gauge in stockinette. I don't know how they write these patterns. It's something way, way beyond my capabilities. But that's another thing I like to look for, because I don't really, I know I can count this. I know how to do stockinette. It's straightforward and simple. When you start getting into a pattern stitch and then you have to measure the pattern stitch, and if it's kind of chunky, then do you press down when you measure it? Do you not? You know, so that's just me. So I did want to, just remind you of that. Now, I'm going to show you something else today before we get started with the knitting. Take this away. And I want to show you what you do when your stitches pull out and stretch out. And this is something that you can do with your own sweaters that you've purchased. Now, we look here. Okay, this was what I showed you last time. This was a drop stitch garter, and it got snagged here. So, because the thread is not broken, I can. Well, I had. Okay. Actually, I had another spot in here that I thought would be maybe a better example. Oh, yes. All right, so over here, now if you look at this and you see how short these are, you see how long these are, and here's one that's kind of looping up. So it's really very simple to correct this. And when you do drop a stitch, I mean, there is no dropped stitch here. Okay, but when you do, what you've got to do is pick up the next stitch you can. If it's starting to go down, and it kind of, and we'll do that another day, kind of like a little ladder, kind of like a run in the old-fashioned. In the stockings from years ago, they were not knit the way they are now, and they were knit in stockinette, but very, very tiny. So you would get a run instead of a hole, which is what the modern ones get. They get a hole, so the run would go, and it would just fly right down. So what you want to do at all costs is to grab a stitch. And you can always go back and bring that and pull that up. So let's just look at this here. So I'm going to look at this thread here and see where this goes. Now, I'm going to just here's where it comes. It comes down here. Okay, now I'm going to actually, let me pull a few of these out. So we've got some leeway here. Now, the reason this one's a little bit tricky because the colors keep changing, but on solid color, it's much easier to do. So I'm going to pull this, and I'm going to take this down so that I'm going to get it. Maybe I'll just stop talking and do it, I suppose. If you can see what I'm doing here. I hope that this is visible. Okay, so now I'm going to go through this. There it is again. There it goes. Pull it out. Okay, just gently. And gradually, everything will come back in line. And of course, this is nice and big, so it's easy to see. Let's see. I think I'll bring this one up a little bit here, and here, and that's going to pretty much close the gap. It was a really big snag at first. And remember, you can do this on your commercially knit sweaters. It's just a matter of understanding where the stitches go. And so even if it had happened, now what if it had happened, say, in here, if this gets pulled out like this, well then I'm going to, you always want to sort of start it first, see if you can see, so you can spot it, and then you just, because all this is connected. So take this up here, and again, this is, you know what, this is hard to see because of the colors changing. This was, I wanted to use this because it was so big, you know, but what I'll do is I'll make, okay, now something happened up here. Let's see what we can do. Okay, here's another problem right here. So there you see, that's my garter stitch. And I'm going to take this up, okay, come over. And you can work right across, the row until you kind of even everything out. And you say, oh, you're not, can't possibly. I mean, it takes a little bit of time because you're going to want to go all the way across the row here. Now see, this is where I've got to, okay, let me bring this up. And this, and here, and as you're going along, just sort of gradually bring it in, and you'll eventually get to the point where, and I know it looks like it looks like it's not happening, but this is all you have to do to get this to come back. Okay, I bring this down here, up here. Sometimes you'll have to go down a little bit into the next row. But the important thing to remember is that you can get this. I don't know if I want to take up the whole, you know, but that's what you have to do to get that, you know, to come back. And the first thing, of course, you want to do is just to give it a good stretching out. And sometimes that alone will take care of your troubles. Okay. All righty. Now, okay. Now, all right. This is the skein I had mentioned last time that I didn't know I had, and so my plan for this is I'll show you. Oops. Oh. I think I'll have enough to do this. I'm going to. Now there was a sweater I brought in one time and showed you, and my idea was to make this the hem. So I would have sewn it onto the garter stitch bottom of the sweater. And so you can see here, so I'll do something with this. I don't know, maybe I'll make myself some kind of a crazy hat with it, but this is what I want to make to put on here. And you say, well, gee, how do you do? Well, what you do is you start, and I'll show you next time. I probably won't have time, but actually this is where I started right here, because I think you can see the end that I wound through, so that would have been the wrong side. But you start with like 2 stitches, and you increase, and when you get to here, and then you put it on a pin, a needle, you know, or just hold it aside, and then you go and you take another yarn and you knit all the way across, and you pick every one of them up. It's really pretty neat, and it's fun to do, and it gives a sweater, you know, a really, you know, I think a really kind of a, well, I hate to say couture, but, you know, it's sort of a designer look. Let's just call it that. So that's what I'm hoping to do with this, which will increase the length of it a little bit. So we'll put this down here. All right, now, okay. Last week, I showed you it was called the Granny lace shawl, that I had made the shawl. And this was the swatch that I made. And if you remember, I had demonstrated over here how to make the picot edge, which was a yarn over, which is, the yarn over is essential to lace work. So there are the yarn overs, and when you fold this over, as I was doing here, and hem it, you make this really nice looking hem. So why don't I just finish, I'll just finish that hemming here. You know, I'm going to, in the past I had given my email. So I'm going to, Katie's going to put it up again. So if you have any, you know, comments or questions, or if you know of a better way to do something and you want to say, well, gee, you know, I do it this way, what about that? That would be great. I'd love that. And I'd love to have people, I'd love to see if somebody might like to come on. There's a group of knitters on Sundays at the library, and I've got to get over there. I think it's the first Sunday of the month, and see what they're doing, and maybe, you know, do part of the put that in the show. So there's my seam, and I think it makes a nice, and you know, this is a nice firm yarn that's easy to work with. When you're working with something that's, well, like that mohair I just showed you, it's harder because you can't see the stitches as clearly. But with this, you can really see this, and there's the swatch. So I'm going to start this. I think what I'll do is I'll just start this with a garter stitch. So I'm going to make another one of these. So I'm going to take this off, put this on a pin, and these are absolutely, these are in, you've got to have a bunch of these, because there are going to be times when you're doing a neckline like this, or you just want to hold on to some stitches or whatever, and you use these. The other way you use these is if you are picking up stitches. In fact, why don't I just show that to you right now? When you go to pick up stitches that are live, which means the needle's not in there. Okay, so I'm going to unravel this. Now, I could use the needle, I could use this needle to go in there, and what I want to do is get it, just let them stay right in a line. But what's easier to do is to take a smaller, a smaller needle, and this is, okay, I'm using this one because this way I can just, you know, it doesn't have, it's a double pointed needle. And you can pick them up, and you know something, even now, see, these have already started to kind of move around. So the idea is just get them on there and use a smaller needle, because it'll be easier to get in that little hole. And when you go to knit, you'll see that they're a little twisted. Okay, so now I'm going to take another needle here and just pick these right up. And so that was just garter stitch, which is knit every row. So that's, so I can just go and knit this back, and then and don't forget, these stitches, these are the stitches from this needle. So these stitches are not as small as this. So even though I'm going to knit to the end here, you're not going to see anything, because when I go back to continue with my knitting, I'll pick up the original needle that I used. So anyway, I'm going to see, the reason I didn't show it to you with this was that, I mean, you can actually knit off of these pins. I mean, it's a little awkward, but you can actually do that. So you just want to kind of hold it, and you see they'll just go right in where they belong. So I'm going to start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to knit for a few minutes here, so I can get the bottom of this done, so you don't have to sit, you know, sort of watching paint dry type of thing. And I'm going to I'll be back in a second. I'm just going to do a few rows here before we get to the yarn overs, so that we can, you know, move the show right along. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've knit my little base here for this, and in case you're, I don't know if you remember the last time I was showing you that invisible thread, that pesky thread. It got all into everything in my bag, so I just want to. So I've got my little base here, and so this was the swatch, and this would have been the bottom of the shawl because I had my little picot edge there. So in place of that, I've put this bit of garter, and so my pattern, and we'll have the pattern. The pattern will come up on the screen as I'm doing this. So my first part is rows 1 to 4, and now most of these in fact, just about all of these patterns that are lace or otherwise, they have charts, and there's all these symbols in the chart. And I did show at another previous show. I had shown an example of the charts. I would personally rather read it in writing than to look at that chart. I do have one thing here. I hope I brought it. Sorry, I should have taken it. Here we are. Okay. I bought this at, I think it's called Slip Stitch Studio. And you can get any kind of ribbon that you want, and they have all sorts of, skulls and puppy dogs and hearts and things like that. And what it does is and I'll show you on this paper, and this is a very helpful, and especially helpful with the charts. So I'm working on rows 1 to 4, so I'm going to put it this way, and now, oh, it's very tight, my goodness. And now I've got it right under my, where I am on my pattern. And with the charts, it's it's even more helpful because you really want to be focusing right on that line. So and I liked having the the ruler handy. So, all right. So now I will go. So I'm going to knit 4. And this is a little bit. Normally I wouldn't use this great big circular needle because it's kind of it gets in the way a bit. But and actually I did have another one here, but let's stay with this. Okay. So I'm going to knit 4. And I assume Donna's going to get a close-up of this. Okay. And on my pattern, this is where you will see, on all patterns, you will see the asterisks. So the asterisks, in between the asterisks is your repeat. This is asterisks, yarn over, purl 2 together, repeat from asterisks. So that's your repeat. And so as you look down here, you're going to see these asterisks again and again, and that's pretty much standard on all patterns. So knit 4, yarn over. Now I'm going to do this yarn over. I'm going to do the yarn over this way because I'm going to be purling 2 together. And that's going to be my repeat on this first row. So this is what I'm making here. I'm making this. I'm doing this right across. Okay, so now if I were going to yarn over and knit 2 together, all right, I'll ask you that question. How would I do this differently if I were going to yarn over and knit 2 together? That's right. I would go this way, and then I'd be ready to knit. But I'm not. I'm purling. So I go this way. Yarn over, purl 2 together. And this is pretty much standard. Just about every time you do a yarn over, you have to purl 2 or knit 2 or purl 2 together. Because if not, you would just run. And sometimes there are patterns where they do want you to enlarge the row. But unless that's the case, for every yarn over, there's a knit 2 together or a purl 2 together, and then I go knit 4. Okay. Now, And now I'm going to go back. Okay, so I'm on row 2. And I don't have my little thing with me, but I have a little, oh, it might be in here. I have a little thing, I think you've seen it before, a little thing that goes onto the needle so I can track, you know, first, second, so forth, and count my rows. All right, so row 2 is going to be the same, so it'll look a little different. Now we're going back, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I'm going to do yarn over, yarn over, and I'm going to look and see how this looks, you see. So I have a little slanting stitch and a straight stitch, purl 2 together. And you want to pay attention to that and make sure, because you want to know that you're knitting together, purling together, the right 2 stitches. Now, when I was working on that horrible shawl, I was using a much narrower, much finer yarn, and it was easy to, and I wasn't doing purl 2 together, I was doing knit 2 together, and it was easy to miss the yarn over, because this is the yarn over. This is a knitted stitch, and this is the yarn over. But it's treated just like a stitch. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Okay, there's my last one, purl 2 together and knit 4, and that's my little frame of the pattern. So, all right, okay, so we're on row 3. Knit 4. Of course, this is garter stitch, as you know. Okay, so yarn over, and there again you see there's the slanting stitch, which is the yarn over. There's the slanting stitch there, slanting, 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 slanting. Okay, purl 2 together. And you know, you do have to pay attention when you do this. It's you know, if you want to make something where you can kind of watch TV, you know, or talk to people, you want to do pretty much garter stitch or stockinette, because if you, well, this is a simple pattern, but when you get into some of these other lace patterns, and I remember that I showed you on that shawl, I mean, you can run into a lot of. So there it is, and this is the right side, and I always like to have this little rope effect here on the right side. All right, now, okay, now I'm going to go to the next, rows 5 to 8, and this is where, goodness, this magnet is really, this is a really strong mat, and the paper's thin too, so that's part of it. Okay, there we go. So now I'm on rows 5 to 8, and this is where I'm going to make this little checkerboard inside here. You know what, I think I need to do, you know what, I think I need to do one more. I have to go back once. We'll do one more here. Let's quickly do this. Okay. Wait, nope, sorry, right, that's right, purl, okay. Purl two together. And there are 24 stitches on this, and so these 24 will be repeated across, you know, whatever it is that you're making. And I think this was pretty much intended as a shawl because it is, you know, it is fairly open. It really wouldn't be suitable for anything, you know, but a shawl. All right. And now this wool yarn I'm using, as you might be able to see, I think you can see, it doesn't have a twist in it. So it's very easy to split, to go in and split your stitch, which you really want to try not to do that and keep an eye out for that. All right, so now I'm on row 5. Okay. So I'm going to, now if you look at this part of the pattern, this is another thing that you'll often see are the brackets. So rows 5 to 8, knit 4, yarn over, purl 2 together, and then a knit 4, purl 4, and that's going to make, the knit 4, purl 4 is going to make the checkerboard, and then yarn over, purl 2 together twice. So when you're repeating a sequence, it's in brackets. So, okay. Okay, so yarn over. Okay, so I'm going to go yarn over, purl 2 together, and I do that twice, so I left something. Okay, all right, now then knit 4, so 1, 2, and I'm knitting, I have to knit those yarn overs too. 1, 2, 3, 4, purl 4, and then now when I copied this pattern, it just dawned on me, when I copied this pattern, this should have said twice here. I did leave something out of this, but we'll straighten it out on the screen. Okay, so that is this. I'll do the one row going back. And there we are again. There's the slanted stitch. And yarn over, purl 2 together. And now I'm going to knit here, because now I'm doing stockinette, and I'm going to purl here. There are my purl stitches. You know what those look like. Oh well. And then yarn over, Purl 2 together, and again, and knit 4. Oh, okay. And you can just barely see it. I think Donna can get a close-up, but there are the 4 knit stitches and the 4 purl stitches, which is going to make that little checkerboard right in the middle there. Okay, now I'm going to go to something else. I had told you about socks, and I didn't mean to make a face, but socks are, I find socks to be kind of complicated, but people make them and people love to make them because they can carry them, and they're very, you know, they're portable and small. So I'm going to we won't, believe me, we won't get this we won't get the sock done this time. I do have the little one I made to show, but I'll have to bring that next time. So I'm going to go to put this aside, and the worst part, the hardest part, I think, of doing the socks is at the end, at the toe. It's called the Kitchener stitch. And it's this way of grafting stitches together. And there's a book that I like, and it's called the, well, let me just say it's called Stitch and B, Stitch and B-I-T, which is not stitch and bite a cheese stick. It's and in that one they and there's all sorts of humor in it and so forth. So they say if you can stand the heat, the Kitchener stitch, and you really do have to really concentrate on what you're doing, and it's at the very end. So I still have, and it's something I still haven't fully mastered. The way I would like to, so it's something I'm still working on learning myself. So, sort of like unraveling. Okay, here we go. All right. Now, we're working on double-pointed needles, and we're going to take this. This is the pattern, and this is the pattern that I use. And I'm going to admit that I'm still very insecure about doing socks. I've made several pairs of socks. I stay with this pattern, and it's very, very straightforward. It's the Yankee knitter designs. They've been around for a long, long time, and this is the pattern that I use. There are books of socks with all sorts of stitches in the leg of the sock and the instep of the sock. I don't do any of that. Yeah, one day I will, but. Now, if you look at this pattern, and this is something you're also going to see in a lot of, well, not just sock patterns, but patterns where you might be using different weights of yarn. So I'm using a worsted weight here. But they give you fingering weight, and they tell you the number of yards. And this is if you want to do 2 colors here. The sport weight's a little thicker, so fewer yards. And the worsted weight, the least number of yards. So I'm going to make the child size here in class. And they tell you that they suggest the size of the needle. So I am working on a number 5 double point needle. And you'll always see this, sides needed to obtain gauge. So if you're a tight knitter and you need to give a bigger needle to make a larger stitch, or if you're a loose knitter, you want to go down a needle to make a tighter stitch to get the gauge. And the gauge here is 5.5 stitches to the inch. Now, I'll tell you the truth, just for this purpose of demonstration, I know that I'm just about right with the gauge. On something like socks, the chances are, since it's so few stitches, relatively speaking, the likelihood of you ending up with this big thing or this small thing is not that you know, the more stitches you have in which to, where you're off gauge, the worse the situation. All right, so, and we're going to do the ribbed socks. I'm going to do knit 1, purl 1, rib, and they have a little drawing down here. They show you needle 1, 2, and 3 that they keep referring to. 2 is the instep. So I'm going to begin, and I'm going to cast on. Okay, so I want to go over here because I'm working with worsted. So I'm going to cast on 32 stitches. I'm going to make the child size somewhere here. They describe that. Oh, here it is. Yeah, directions are for babies. So child's is small. So that's what I'm going to do, so we can do this a little more quickly than making a full size sock. We don't need to do that for the demonstration. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cast on I'm going to cast on 30, I'm sorry, I lost my place here, wait a minute. Oh, okay, cast on 32 stitches. All right, so I'm going to do that right now, and then I'm going to come back and show you how you divide the stitches onto 3 needles, because you're going to work on 3 double-pointed needles at once. Okay, now what I've done is I have circled, since there's all these numbers here, I've circled what I'm working on, which is the second one in. So I've circled 8, 16, and 8. So I cast on 28. Oh, you know what I did? There's a perfect example. The last one I made was with 32 because I was making the baby one, and so I was supposed to cast on. Oh, no, that's right. I'm right. 32. Okay, there it is. In fact, let me just cast on 32. Okay, so I am at 32 now. Slip the first 8 onto an empty needle. So now you're going to have that first one's going to be loose there, but you're going to tighten that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. All right. So there's where I am right now. You know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to just tie a little knot here so I don't have to worry about that again. I probably should have done that to begin with. Okay. All right. Then, slip first 8 onto an empty needle. They're saying this is needle number 1. Slip next 16 onto another empty needle. Well, this is 2. Well, I'm just going to count 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So these ones here are going to be slipped onto my 3rd needle. And then we're going to join them. And I'll admit it takes a little bit of dexterity to work with, because eventually you're going to be working with 4 needles. Okay. 4 double-pointed needles. Now, there's something called the magic, so there we are. Oops. There's something called the magic loop, and it's a way to use 2 circular needles, which I don't want to be part of myself, but some people say, and then some people say there's a way to use 1 circular needle, but this is what I've always done. So let me just double check. So first 8, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 8. Uh-oh. Okay. Let me fix that. Good thing I checked. Okay, 2, 4, 6, 8. And over here, 2, 4, 6, 8. And this shall be 16. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. You know, it's always, no matter how simple something is, when I'm counting, I have to say, I feel this sort of inward sigh of relief when the numbers are right. I really do. Okay, now, join into a round, being careful not to twist your stitches. All right, so We're going to go like this. Now this is not the thread I'm working with. Okay, so it means I have to go like this. Let me get this out of the way. And I'm going to join this over here. And I'm going to join the stitches like this. I'm going to get my 4th needle. I'm going to go in here to knit, to pick this up, around, do it nice and firmly, and there I am. So I'm going to start my, there is my untwisted leg opening. Now, people that really get good at this, there's ways in some of the sock books where you can measure and change your numbers and so forth. This just assumes one size. Sometimes what I will do is I'll make a bigger leg opening, and then when I get down to the foot, which does fit me on this pattern, the leg is a little tight, so I just kind of knit some stitches together. Okay, so I've knit. Now I'm going to purl. So I'm going to purl, and what I like to do is I kind of hold it like this, and sort of brace it here. Okay, purl, and this one just kind of hangs there. Okay. And usually when I'm doing this, my hands are usually in my lap, and when I want to, okay, now I'm going to go to my next. Okay, that was a purl. I'm going to start with it. That was a purl stitch. There you can see the ribbing. So now I'm going to go with a knit to continue my ribbing. And sometimes I just kind of press it. I just kind of press it against my stomach while I'm knitting to bring the needle up. Okay. Oh, I'll see. This is what happens. Okay, so let me go back. I mean, it's not, you can learn to do this. When I first did this, it was just awful. I mean, everything was sliding around, and I was, having a terrible time. But you kind of learn how to sort of brace the needles in your hand against your fingers. So I'm hoping you can get a close up of this. And there's not much I can do about that needle that's flipping up in the front. Okay. It's kind of an erratic. Okay, and now you see what happened here. This little stitch got loose. So let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8. So it belonged over here. So let me go back and pick that up. And that would have been a purl. Okay. And now this is back where I started. So, it's hard to avoid, I don't know, there may be some knitters that know some trick to avoid getting that little gap, but really pretty much all you can do is, luckily it's a knit stitch, so I'm just going to go right in there and pull that as tight as I can. And now I've joined it. So it's all, well, I joined it before, but now I've done my whole row. And if I'm very lucky, the rib pattern will not be disturbed. And I lucked out on this one. I don't know, maybe it's not luck. Maybe that's the way maybe that has to do with the number that they tell you to put on there. But as you can see, so that's going to be the top of the sock. with the right side out. That'll be the outside. And so, fortunately, I just am going to now, I can continue on with my 4th needle. We've just got a few minutes left, so I'm just going to continue and do another round. And I hope you found this lesson interesting. It was an awful lot of quiet knitting, but sometimes that's, we can't constantly talk. You have to, the knitting has to be done. I don't know if any of you watch Breaking Bad, but, Walter always says respect the chemistry. And it's sort of the same idea. You have to, the knitting has to be done, and you have to focus and concentrate on it. You can't constantly be looking around and talking. Okay, purl. So what I'm going to do between now and next time, I'm just going to knit a very short cuff, and when we do the next show, we'll start doing the forming the heel. Ugh. Okay. Okay. Oops. Oops. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. There we go. And as awkward as this looks, you will learn to handle the four needles. You just make sure that they don't get too close to the end. The thing about this is not very slippery yarn. This yarn is mostly acrylic, and it's kind of a rough yarn. It probably wouldn't even feel that good as socks, but it is kind of clinging to the needles. So, and there we are. So that is the top of the sock. We're going to continue knitting down to make, and this, of course, is a child's sock. So, thank you, my beloved students, for spending another hour with me. And the Norfolk Knitting School is going to be, we're going to end here because I've got some more to do before I can move forward in the sock. So thank you for very much for watching. I'm Anne-Marie Battistone. This is the Norfolk Knitting School. And of course, you've been watching Norfolk Public Access. Thank you so much for being with me, and I'll look for you the next time.